You're listening to the Chris Voss Show Podcast. We interview the smartest people in the room, the CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators to fill up your brain and make you better looking. Here's your host, Chris Voss.
Hi, folks. Chris Voss here from thechrisvossshow.com, thechrisvossshow.com. Hey, we're coming here with another great podcast with all the most brilliance of minds in the world. Is brilliance of minds? Is that a thing? I don't know. I went to public school. Anyway, guys, we certainly appreciate you guys tuning in. Be sure to give us a like, subscribe to us on that thing called youtube.com/, Chris Voss. We have this really cool technology where most of the podcasts you're going to hear is on audio, if you're listening right now, but you can watch the video part of it, and it's really cool. Your eyes will thank you. You can go to youtube.com/ Chris Voss and refer the show, of course, to thecvpn.com or chrisvosspodcast.com. There's 9 podcasts over there with so much information, details, and episodes. You may experience serious brain bleed. Anyway, guys, we certainly appreciate you being here and sharing the podcast with us. So today we have a most excellent author and brilliant guest on, as always, of course, but this one is very special because she's I don't know, the smartest author we have on today. So there you go. It's Leisa Peterson. She's a certified financial planner, and she's on a mission to help 1 million people elevate their financial consciousness by realizing their true value and creating financial security for themselves. As a coach and a mindset teacher, Leisa's hosts the Mindful Millionaire podcast, as well as virtual workshops and life-transforming retreats. Her masterful blend of sound financial strategy and mindfulness training helps people break free of patterns of lack, scarcity, and money fears, allowing them to finally lead the rewarding, fulfilling, and abundant lives they most desire. She's appeared in the Wall Street Journal, Fast Company, Forbes, The Week, Washington Post, and has been featured on many podcasts and radio shows. You name it. It seems like she's been on it. And she's got a most excellent book that we're going to talk about today, The Mindful Millionaire. It's a revolutionary program for finding peace, joy, and prosperity inside of your relationship with money. And welcome to the show, Leisa. How you doing?
Hi, Chris. I'm so happy to be here.
We're so happy to have you. Did we cover you pretty good there? Did we get most of the stuff in? You had so many accolades on your bio. I mean, it was going to take me about an hour to go through the whole show of the accolades. So those who like to can go to your website and check them out. So Leisa, give us the .com so we can go see you on the interwebs.
So you can go to mindfulmillionairebook.com or wealthclinic.com, and both of those places you'll find all kinds of good stuff there about money and mindset.
Awesome sauce. And you've written this excellent book and got it published out there, which is really interesting. People can get that on Amazon, I'm sure.
Yep.
And independent booksellers.
Stores.
Independent bookstores, as they always like to say, you got to support those independent bookstores. So order the book up, guys. Get a copy of it. Amazon, Barnes & Noble, IndieBound, BAM, Book Passage. So let's get to know you a little bit better. Leisa, tell us about kind of how you got here, what your origin story is, and everything else.
Thank you. So I have always been quite interested in money from a really early age. At 8 years old, I figured out how to mail away for seeds and started selling door to door. And those people, right, that are kind of like entrepreneurs from a very early age, that would be me. But my parents were also business owners. And so I think I was like, well, if they can do it, I can do it. And sadly, my parents weren't very good with money. And so the thing that, I look at it when we're growing up, we might become like our parents, or we may try really hard to become the opposite of our parents. And that was pretty much my story. I decided that if you had lots of money, then you were happy and everything was like the yellow brick road. And that was a good idea. At least I thought so. So I went into the money business and worked in it for a really long time. Sadly, I also faced several tragedies starting about 21 years ago. And that was a turning point where I started to realize that my obsession with money might not actually work out the way that I thought.
I went through a similar journey. I grew up poor, and my family, we grew up in North Hollywood, and I used to walk the dog with Bob Barker as a kid, and we were surrounded by money, but my parents managed an apartment complex, and so they got a great deal living for free. We were 2 blocks down from the Mann Theater, or the Kodak Theater, I think it's called now, and so. I had the same sort of experience. I became successful, built my companies, became an entrepreneur at 18, but the mindset with money and stuff became a challenge. So we can talk about that later. But it kind of became like, is this all there is? And like, it seemed like the more money I made, the more everyone just kind of hated me, which is probably me. So in your book, The Mindful Millionaire, you talk a lot about different topics, and this is probably a good lead-in, I guess. In it, you talk about people that go through the different paradox. And I guess, what's the basic premise of your book?
So it's this idea that, like we're talking about, where I think we've all got an idea of what's going to happen when we have the money. And so we go about our lives, I'm going to make a lot of money, or I'm going to do whatever it takes. And somewhere along the way, we realize that it's not really about the money. It's actually about what's going on inside of us. And that was the big wake up call for me, that I realized, even though I became successful by my mid-30s, a self-made millionaire, I was really messed up inside. I had a lot of negative head garbage, and I didn't really have anybody to kind of help me. And so I started out on a path to figure out what I could do to change that inner conversation, because it was pretty messed up.
I think I feel you in that, because I went through that sort of same thing. It seemed like no matter how much I bought for everyone, the more they hated me, the more I paid for the party, the more what a jerk I was. And I thought that when I went from being poor to being, rich, I, solving my problems, heal my wounds, heal all my psychology issues. It just seemed to create more. So you talk about some of this in your book on how to deal with it, and also how to be more mindful with your money. Yeah.
Well, what I ended up realizing after kind of being in the money business, which is where I went, it sounds like we picked these paths. I wanted to be around money. So I wanted to be a financial advisor. I wanted to help people with their money. And in the course of working with people and their money, I started noticing how I wasn't the only one who was struggling with these emotional aspects. And like a perfect example would be when things don't go your way, you sort of throw a temper tantrum and you're not really good at self-regulating, right? I mean, this is happening out there a lot right now, just to be clear. But I was that person. And I think that I would notice I was a mortgage banker and eventually a financial advisor before I left and started this. I would just notice how something would go wrong, and literally people would be like screaming and yelling for no reason, just totally pissed off, blaming everyone. And I was like, wait a minute, we have a serious problem in our world about the way that we treat each other, especially as it pertains to money.
Definitely so. I think I may have been one of those people with lots of screaming and stuff. I mean, we built a little armada of companies, and I one of them was a mortgage company. And there was a time there where I hit so many balls out of the park. I started one company, and turned it into a multimillionaire company. And within, a year and a half, I started a second company, turned that one. I mean, these all turned profits really quickly. And then I did it with a third. And then it kind of became this magic man sort of thing. And then when I went for the fourth ball, it cost a lot of money and lost a lot for the first year. We did make a profit, but yeah, I struggled with, I don't know what you call it, some sort of syndrome of thinking I was better than I really was.
Yeah. A lot of the folks who come to me are realizing that there are patterns that they're repeating over and over again. So maybe they hit a ceiling, like you were talking about, where you've had success, and then all of a sudden the success stops and they're questioning, wait a minute, I thought I was really good at this and it's not working out anymore. And what I've learned is all my study and research that I chronicle in the book, is meant to help people when they hit those walls, when they hit those ceilings, when they have the breakdown and they're not sure what to do. I started realizing that money is a great proxy for the relationship that we have with ourselves. And so if I could use money, I could direct people back into what is the pattern and how can you change it so you're not stuck in it anymore.
Yeah. I mean, one of the problems I had was probably an internal relationship with a lot of other stuff that was missing in my life, and stuff that wasn't making me happy. Like I thought buying all this stuff would make me happy. I thought, owning all this stuff would make me happy. I remember I kind of broke one time when I watched Fight Club and I started getting the concepts that were in Fight Club. And I realized that I, what's the old lines from Fight Club where, we buy crap that to impress people that don't give a crap about us, basically. and so there was a lot of issues that I had, and I probably should have read your book back in the day. Some other things you talk about in the book is the concept of scarcity and how to get people more focused on their problems, which is probably what I should have done, than and possible solutions available to them. And I guess that's important for people to understand.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of research actually that when we're in this pattern of scarcity, also known as tunneling, we actually become stupid. Like it's like losing a full night's sleep. 14-point reduction in IQ. So like the world is happening and yet we can't see all the options. All we see is a small portion of like, not enough. There's a problem. I can't get through this. And then we go and make decisions from a really deficient place and it doesn't work out that well. So the more we understand our own patterns of when that gets triggered and then what we can do differently is really, really helpful, especially right now with what's going on in the world.
And PSA, from my experience, mixing with booze won't make it better. if you're struggling, because I turned to vodka for some of it, but and in some ways it was actually a creative tool for me. I used it like Hemingway did, but there came a point where it was more destructive than whatever. So I think it's really important people kind of understand these things, and if anything, prepare themselves. It was funny for me because since I was young and I was a dumb kid, and I knew I was a dumb kid, so I read everything I could on sales, business, being a CEO. I read Harvard Business Review all the time. I'd skipped college because I'd started my first company at 18 and been successful, and so I prepared for everything. But I didn't prepare for the mindset of how to deal with money and success, like what you talk about in your book. I hadn't prepared for any of that. I prepared for everything else. And then I got there. I probably should have gone into counseling when I look back on it. But so basically you help people, not only in your book, but you help your clients experience how to get a healthy mentality towards money.
Yeah, because I want to help them not worry about it. I want to help them be able to be more successful with the things that are most important to them. Sometimes we become so focused on money that we don't actually focus on like, what's our life passion? What do we really enjoy doing? And scarcity will do that. It'll make you think, well, I have to work hard for my money, and there's no such thing as a free lunch. And I need to do whatever it takes to make the money, even if that means sacrificing the things that are most important to me. And I think that I wanted to show people that there really is a possibility of turning your life in the direction of doing more of what you love, right? And not having it be a sacrifice. That also happens sometimes, when you start a business, all of a sudden you're just struggling, whereas you made great money when you worked for somebody else.
Yeah. I mean, one of my challenges was none of the businesses I created were anything I loved. I wasn't passionate about any of them. The one thing I was passionate about that was my motivator was being a CEO and being the innovative guy, the idea guy, the buck stops here guy. And I love that. And I used to tell my investors or board, I used to say, I don't even know why people pay me for this job, because I would do it for free as long as I was that guy. I was the guy, the Ranger, they dump out of the helicopter in the Rambo in the middle of nowhere, and they go cut a path for everyone else to come. And so I used to love that. I used to love the challenge of it. But not having the people come up to me in my offices and go, it's so great that you found something you're really passionate about. It used to really mess with my head because I'd be like, I don't really care about any of this. I finally decided that I cared about being an investor and building these things. And that was my fun, but I still wasn't there. I wasn't happy. I was not happy. And so I just tried to buy everything for me and everyone else to make me happy and them happy. And that didn't work either. So being mindful of your money and dealing with, where money is, where your happiness is, where you are and everything else, is really important. In your book, you talk about the power of discovering your true self, I guess.
Yeah. So that was an interesting addition. Sometimes we think that we're writing a book, but in reality, the book is sort of writing us or something like that. And the book really had an agenda that was like, okay, it's not about the money. It's actually about this incredible relationship that you can have with yourself. And that the more you build that relationship, the greater you have a feeling of confidence in yourself. And then also that can translate to money. Some people also find out that they need a lot less to be just as happy or way more happy. So it's like figuring out your own, where you want to fall on the spectrum of how hard you want to work and how much money you want to have, and creating a custom experience for yourself versus what other people tell you you need to be happy.
That's a great commercial soundbite right there. I love that. I was actually on the phone with a friend of mine who has gone through some physical issues, 120 days in the hospital. She got the malaria and almost died, and amputations and the challenge of just trying to live through that. And I was talking to her the other night, and she goes, I just can't find the end of this. And I go, that's because the story isn't done yet. You got to go find your ending, but you got to go live it first. So I love the analogy that you just gave of how sometimes you think you're writing the book, but the book's writing you.
Yeah.
So you do some studies in the book about children under the age of 7 and money in the book and the effect it can have on children as they're growing up. Do you want to unpack that for us a little bit?
Sure. I've had several people who read early editions of the book say that, well, I think this is great for me. I'm also realizing that it's helping me become a better parent. And the reason for that is, like you said, there are studies that say that our money personality is actually formed by the age of 7, which is mind-blowing because we're not even dealing with money. So it means that all the stuff that was happening in the home when we were growing up, or if we have young children, like, really notice, because they are sucking it all up. They're putting it in that, thing in the mind and storing it away in their emotional center as well as in their practical patterns. And when we realize that the behaviors with money start really early in life, it causes us to kind of think back, like, well, what was happening in my home when I was 4, 5, and 6? Maybe that's some of the reasons why I do what I do.
Yeah. I know a lot of stuff that people talk about. I don't know if this is the same vein, but they talk about how, a lot of parents, you'll be the kid and you're like, hey, mommy, can we buy a box of cereal? Mommy, can we buy this? And, she's standing at the cash register just trying to, deal with the kids and, getting checked out and stuff. And she'll say, well, we don't have enough money for that. Or, she's just 9 times out of 10, she's just trying to get the kid to calm down so they can get the order placed. Some parents, though, that's very true, I think, and there's a lot of people that have talked about how psychologically that builds some scotomas where people, it creates issues with money. Is that kind of the same thing you're talking about?
Completely. And I was totally trained that way. And even while I was doing this work, my son called me out at doing it. So it goes so deep, we don't even know it. And my 9-year-old's like, you just bought a new car and you can't buy me this candy bar. You got
wow.
it. Like,
those are some negotiators right there. Wow. The guilt too. You got to love it, man. Those kids are going to go far, man. They're going to be negotiator attorneys or something like that. put them over the thing. You know, what was interesting to me was one of those scotomas that my dad tried to put on me, and he was a good man. He loved VWs back in the 70s, and we had like 3 of these stupid things. He loved VW vans and VW things, and back then I think they were kind of still new to America, and so they were kind of like cheap and kind of cool. I remember we would drive around because I was born in Hollywood. And so on every corner, I would see Mercedes, Rolls Royce, Benz, Bentley, BMW. Like it was really a weird world I lived in because I didn't understand money at the time, but I just saw this opulence around us. And I just thought, okay, well, that's the way the world works, right? You know, then when we moved out of North Hollywood, it was kind of a shock. But I remember asking him, I'm like, Dad, how come you don't drive like a Mercedes or a BMW? He'd be like, oh, the bank owns those. And I'm like, okay, well, I guess he's right. He's my dad. And after a while, I kept thinking, you know, I'd be like, hey, that's a nice car. The bank owns those. And then one day I got wise and I went, so Dad, does the bank own your, you know, piece of crap VW? He had kind of one that was a beater. And he goes, yeah, but it's not the same thing. And I'm like, well, how is it not the same thing? Shut up. He got pissed. You know, then I realized that, oh, well, everyone finances their cars and the bank owns everything. And maybe my dad isn't quite, I don't know where he's at. And maybe I should figure it all out. But he definitely kind of had some issues with money as well. And so, this is something a lot of people need to clean up and think about. I think, you know, I grew up poor. I thought money would fix everything. And, you know, I had 2 BMWs, a house in Utah, a house in, Las Vegas, 1 in Denver, 3 offices, 4 offices in 3 different states. I just throw money at everything that was a problem, including my own psychology. Well, actually I should have hired psychologists for that, but I bought a lot of things and threw a lot of parties, thinking that would solve all my problem. I brought all the toys, everything I didn't have as a child growing up poor, I bought, and I figured that's going to patch up that wound, and it didn't. So, perfect example of what you're talking about. What was important for you in trying to get this book out to the world and help people?
I think in working with so many people, you know, it's like one thing to know that you've got a pattern or that you've watched other people. But when I started working with people and they were willing to give me their stories and let me share the stories in the book, I got even more motivated because as we went through the process, I started to see that nobody had really tackled this in the way I was. Like, I'm a super deep thinker. I don't like superficial responses. I don't like The Secret or like Law of Attraction where you're just like, think and grow rich. I mean, I know that's a famous book, but like, I've never met a millionaire who was like, oh, all I did was like manifest
thought and grow rich.
Yeah. Like, and so once I saw that people actually started making big changes, you know, like doubled their income or paid off $100,000 in debt in a short amount of time, I was like, holy cow, this totally works. If somebody's committed, they're not committed, nobody can help them. But if they're committed, like I have created a process that really, really works. And that was when you're like, I'm going to do whatever it takes to, and you know how some coaches, they just give you a little bit and then they're like, oh, but you have to take my class or blah, blah, blah. I was like, I'm going to give everything I teach in the book so that somebody could just buy the book and literally change their life if they wanted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I used to have that with clients. I'd be like, I give the training and they'd be like, hey, can you just do like more of the work for us? So that's great. It's great that you have the book and then you have so many other programs that you're running on your website and ways to help people take them through things, because some people need, you know, something more in depth. Some people can just read it and get it. You know, I like you have always been wary of you know, I got into Tony Robbins early on, Lou Tice, a couple other brilliant people, but I kind of early on kind of figured out that, you know, just saying the little swatch words or whatever you want to call them, the little sayings, you know, don't really do it. Like they don't, you got to do the work. You got to put in the effort. You can't just sit around, like you say, well, I became rich one day. I just said, think and grow rich, and boom, there's money in my account.
Yeah. I mean, there's some inner mining, and once somebody realizes that it helps them, I think all we need is a little taste of it. And then it's like, oh my gosh, this like really works. Like it feels like a whole new world. And a lot of us need that restart. I think restarts are awesome.
For me, it was a great restart. I got rid of my business partner, who was actually just being a huge weight on my on my life and business. I was the contributor, I was the rock star, I was the creator, and he would do a lot of the stuff that was just the rudimentary stuff. So I would create these, the business, and then I'd be like, here, make sure the wheels go around. And he was good at that. And we had a really great business partnership for 13 years, friendship for 22. But once he kind of burned out on being an entrepreneur and decided he just wanted to go do something else, I was able to separate from him. And then I was actually able to save enough money to pull back and go, I really need some more me time. And I for a while I ran a couple of our companies in Utah from Las Vegas for a few years. And I kind of started to do what I wanted to do. And that was really wonderful. And I wasn't making quite as much as I used to make when I had 100 employees. And we had, just the major output of all that stuff that you got to deal with. But I was much happier. Like I could spend time with my dogs, and I could work on being more happier. And my life quality, even though I wasn't making quite as much money, just improved like by 10 trillion%. And as a human being, you just can't put a price on happiness, really, when it comes down to it.
Yeah, I think that, times again with what we're going through, there's maybe more interest in kind of regrouping and saying, well, what really does bring me happiness? Maybe all that spending wasn't doing what I thought. And I think also we live in a society that's based on instant gratification. And when we start to realize that we could spend less, save more, prepare better for our future, we don't know how long we want to work. Some of us love work and we're going to do what we're doing for the rest of our lives, but there also are jobs that aren't able to be done that way. And so being able to really take good care of yourself now and later is what I'm trying to live by and teach others.
Yeah. And it makes, like I do what I've done what I want, and whatever I want to do since 2004, I've been able to work my own hours, do my own thing. I mean, I worked my own hours before, but when you get to a certain level of complexity with your multi-businesses and tons of employees, I mean, you got to show up 9 to 5 and stuff. But I've had just incredible freedom to be able to do what I want, work on my projects, work on my life. This is what I do. One of the things that I do, I love to podcast, love to talk to other people, find out, people who are smarter than me, be able to pick their brains so that I can get hopefully smarter. I don't know. There's a lot of work here that's got to be done right here. But I love this because I love the adventure of talking to people, finding out how they got where they're at, where they came from, what built them, what made them, what motivated them. To me, that I find that really interesting because it's such a beautiful kaleidoscope of this world. And so me being able to have that freedom, and maybe that was my happiness, is being able to have the freedom to do what I wanted. Because I literally, back then, I used to tell people, I live in a gilded cage. Like, you look at me and you're like, this guy has everything I could ever want. And I'm like, I live in a cage. I live in a state that I hate. I work with people that I'm not all that excited about. Everyone, no matter what I do, I'm just always a piñata. All your, people come in the room and be in my office and be like, hey, we need to borrow some money off you. Why? Why me? Because you're rich. Wow. Okay. People steal from me and be like, well, you have money, you're the boss, you won't miss it. You're just like, serious? And so a lot of times I just felt like I had a big old, like dartboard on my back, or, one of those arrow things. And I just felt so abused. And then once I got free and I started making choices about my happiness and what I really wanted to do, that just made my life so much better. So I really I really believe in what you talk about in your book and support it, because it's night and day. I mean, I was ready to just blow my brains out. Seriously. I was at the end of my wits when I finally got free of everything I needed to do in 2004. And my life's been so great ever since then.
Do you think that you just made your own happiness, like you committed to your own happiness?
Yeah. And it didn't, a good part of it was getting rid of my business partner, who was a drainer. And, you know, I'd say to him, hey man, we need some ideas, because we're bleeding out cash in this portion of the business. Go home with some ideas. Here's the thing. And he would come back with nothing, and you just be like, whatever. I think when we got rid of him, I replaced him with somebody for like $1,200 a month or something. like an assistant or something. And that was the amount of work he was putting in. And so, yeah, then it just became a journey about, what do I want to do now? I have all this time on my hands. I'm not working for everyone else anymore. I mean, I'm working for employees, but not like at the scale that I need to do to support both me and my ex-business partner. And so, yeah, it became a journey of, well, what do I want to do? And then, of course, with the recession forcing me to realign, trashing my mortgage business and all of our other companies, I had to realign there and reinvent myself. But the beauty is I had always been the inventor. So I just had to figure out what the next thing was to work and make that work. And fortunately, whatever sort of skills or talents I had made that work. But the focus, like you say, on being happy, on finding out what makes me tick, on doing what makes me work. You know, freedom's a big thing to me. I don't know if freedom is something you find with most people that are trying to find that happiness.
I think a lot of people are, but a lot of people are so drinking the Kool-Aid of the being, I don't have a choice.
Yeah.
You don't know how to get out of that pattern.
Yeah.
You know, so freedom, just like money, has different meanings for every single person you put it in front of. But I think that as a human being, we do want that feeling. And I think the closer we get to it, the more we see that our whole life is actually kind of, our joy is only going to be found in that place of some degree of freedom. And the more you can walk away, like I love that idea of having money that, you know, people call it FU money, where they like, I want this number because I may stay in my job or I may leave my job, but I want to know that I never have to put up with things that I don't believe in. Right. Or,
Yeah.
You know, it's just, that's freedom for a lot of people.
I thought it was freedom. And you know, one thing I remember, I was listening to Anthony Robbins when I was young. I think this was some of his first seminars in 1989 when I got a chance to meet him. And he talked about how he worked with some executives and he met people that, you know, they made $50,000 a year and they were incredibly happy. And then he worked with people who made $3 million a year and they were just miserable because they didn't make $5 million a year. They only made $3 million a year. And their whole attitude and their whole life outlook was, I'm horrible. I'm doing awful. I'm a failure. And you're just like, you're making $3 million a year. And so I think, you know, this is one of the things that I wish they teach in school, how to deal with money, how to deal with credit, how to deal with all these different things that they don't teach people, which are real life needs and skills. So I really think you're right. In your book, you talk about something called I Prosper, which is the process where you guide through, I guess, part 2 of your book. Can you unpack that process for us?
Sure. So as I was mentioning, I kind of worked with people and then I reverse engineered the process that they went through. And then I started to give that process more of a life of its own. And so I Prosper stands for intention, pattern, reclaiming your feelings, opportunity, story. So story is like the pivotal sort of, you think of the hero's journey. And I talk a lot about that, where you all of a sudden realize that the world that you've been kind of thinking existed isn't the world that really exists. And so you break through into like a new era of the way you live. And so I use story to help people write their own old story and then write the new story. And then we move into permission, evidence, and reinvention. And so it's all about what's the process that you can do over and over again? Whenever you hit an obstacle in life, you're looking at like, why am I doing this stuff? Why is it, needing to change? And then at the end, that's where I tie in the finance part, because I want to teach people that they can start to have their finances look differently and be more self-supporting than maybe what they're doing now, which might not be helping them, with their long-term goals.
I really love that. I mean, I can affirm that journey that I had to go on. And just being more doing what I want and being free to do what I want. I mean, I used to tell people, I live in a gilded cage. Like, you think this is great? I feel trapped. Like, I feel trapped. And I think one of my problems was my money mental issue, where I wasn't dealing with what was going on inside of me or inside of my head. I was just throwing money at everything. And I remember there was a really insecure period I went where it would drive me crazy if I would at least every weekend go down and just buy something at the mall. It was like this really weird insecurity period that I went through where I'm like, you got to go buy something for the house, down at the mall. It's like, it's a really, I don't know. I should have seen a counselor, I suppose. Probably should still. We my listeners like, yeah, really serious, Chris. We've listened to 500 episodes. Yeah, it's probably time. So anyway, but no, I think this is really great. And like I said, I can affirm the brilliance of your book and the thought process you're putting into you and your clients, because it does happen. And I can now realize, and I realize this is an epiphany with you coming on the show, that I should have prepared for this more. So it's probably a great thing, even if you're not successful yet and you're not making a lot of money yet. I mean, this is a great book if you are, but to read this book ahead of time, to prepare yourself for being in that position, because when you're in it, it's such a whirlwind of an experience. It's a hurricane, and you're stuck in the eye, and you can feel very trapped sometimes, and which is weird because people don't ever think that. Like, people are like, you can do whatever you want, and you're like, I can't really, because
the piece that's coming to mind as you share that is like, questioning our assumptions is something that I don't think people are always great at. And when you get in the habit of like questioning the assumptions that you just believe is true, a whole new way of looking at the world, perspective, relationships, it changes. So I love, giving people questions, and it's like, they can't answer it because it's so deep. They're just like deer in headlights, like, oh crap. Because they know that this is an area that they just haven't paid that much attention to.
And you bring up a good point, relationships. I've always been a single guy all my life. And when I became successful, I was still single, and I was actually still single. I mean, I started my first company when I was 18. So one of my biggest problems was I was building companies. So it was really hard to date the first few years. And the first few years, we were really in that grind mode of sweat equity and 24/7. And there just wasn't time to date. And I was so into being an entrepreneur and creating and just loving that whole part of my life. I kind of ignored that whole end of it. I didn't have time. But then once I became successful, I started to date. And a lot of the problems that I was having with my money and my mentality, like you talk about, and me, was also flushed into my relationships, as you mentioned. And that wasn't healthy either. I wasn't the best boyfriend, fiance in the world sometimes. And a lot of that I approached from a money aspect too. Cause I don't know, give her a bigger diamond, whatever she wants, go to the oyster bargain. And I just, whatever, let's just throw money at it. And that maybe that'll fix it. And it didn't. And I really had to get that life balance.
Yeah. Relationships, I feel like, are a big factor that improves as a result of going through it, because I know I've applied it in my relationship with my husband over and over and over again. And I can honestly say, after 33 years, we have a better relationship and more love and more intimacy than like we ever have. And I think it's the opposite of what a lot of people feel like when you're together for that long. You're like, well, doesn't it die out? And I'm like, actually, when you keep reinventing who you are and you keep growing as a person and expanding and questioning the assumptions, and you encourage your partner to do the same, because believe me, like they kind of get dragged along actually for a while. They're dragged him along, but he knows it and he's okay with it, because he's like, my life is better as a result of these shifts, because he has to keep up, and he becomes a better person and a better father and a better husband as a result.
I think that's pretty brilliant. You do have to grow together. I might have been better off if I would have gotten married and started the family thing before I started my businesses. But I mean, this is the role. That's the way it went. But I think a lot of people probably have challenges in their relationships with money. I've seen people that they get successful in business, and then their partner starts to be a sabotager. They don't like the change, so they start sabotaging the change. They start sabotaging the money. That actually was what broke up my partnership that I had with one of the partnerships in the business things that I've done. But that's what happened with my long thing. We got a Yoko Ono in the gears. And the Yoko Ono started talking to my business partner, telling him, you don't need that Chris Voss guy. And so, but sometimes it happens. Like I used to meet people and they'd be like, why do you need this BMWs in the big house? And I'm like, I don't know. I grew up poor. I'm fixing something, but I really wasn't fixing anything. I really wasn't fixing any wound, because there was still that poor kid in me that I don't know, just didn't get hugged enough as a child, or whatever the hell my problem was.
I mean, we do try to fill the hole with money, but we also try to fill the hole with relationships. And I think that's why I had one person, after they finished the book, they came back and they said, you could take the word money out of I Prosper and put in food, and it would be the same thing. Or you could put in relationships or love and have it be the same exact process. I mean, that's when you're really hitting upon truth, kind of transformational truth, is if it can work in a whole bunch of different settings and still have an impact in people's lives.
Well, it sounds like you've nailed some pretty good paradigms on life and behavior and things that help us be truly successful and happy. And yeah, it gives you that spectrum where you can look at a lot of these different things and growth and patterns and like I say, to me, being happy was the richest thing ever. Now, I may not make as much money as I used to make back in the crazy days, but I'm happy, and I will trade the sanity of mine that I used to have to go through. I'll trade that for just about anything. You almost can't put a price on it. And me being able to be free enough to work my whole life from home, spend time with my dogs, do whatever I want, travel, see things, being able to escape, take time off and do just like really whatever I want. Back then I couldn't, because things were so tight and there was so much going on. We had multiple businesses, not just one. And so, you'd be like, well, why don't we take a week vacation? You'd be like, there's no way, there's no way. I have to take these weekend jaunts, and because you just were spinning so many plates. But it's really important people get this, and I encourage people to check out your book, because I should have prepared better for the money thing. I just thought it was easy, and a lot of people did too. A lot of people just say to me, "Well, it's great that you've got so much money, you can do whatever you want," and you're like, "I actually can." That's kind of doesn't make any sense to me when I think about it.
Yeah.
And so pretty good stuff. So great stuff to have in your book. I encourage everyone to check it out. Anything more we need to know, Leisa, today about you and your book and what you guys are doing over there?
I think just the reminder of what we've been talking about, that even if things aren't where you want them to be right now, the possibility and the opportunity is limitless, regardless of what's going on in the economy. There's always an opportunity to thrive. And I just want to encourage people to do whatever it takes to know that you have the life we're talking about, that you're really happy because you deserve it. And how fast can we help you get there, really?
Definitely. The Mindful Millionaire, a revolutionary program for finding peace, joy, and prosperity inside of your relationship with money. I really recommend people get the book because I've lived that challenge both up and down, and I'm probably always still on that journey where you're always trying to just find the perfect life balance, money balance, and things like that. I mean, like right now, I think a lot of people are going through that. We're going through that too, where the economy's changed. I think overnight I lost like $40,000 as soon as they canceled some of the big events we do every year for public events. And so now I'm in kind of a different mind with your money sort of experience where it's a recessionary mind for your money. Fortunately, I've lived through it before through 2008. So I have some pretty good skills. I'm falling back on a lot of those muscle memory that comes back to me for that. But I think a lot of people will be going through those challenges. I don't know. Do you think that's probably preeminent here in what we're doing in this crisis that we're going through?
Yeah, I think, it's, if you've been through it before, maybe you have some skills, maybe you haven't been through it before, definitely connect with people that have built that resiliency that you're talking about, because I don't think we're through it. I think that we're still watching what's going to be unfolding. And the more you can take good care of yourself, make good choices, the better off you're going to be.
Most definitely. Most definitely. So I encourage everyone to check out the book. Give us the .coms, Leisa, where people can look you up on the interwebs.
So mindfulmillionairebook.com. And the reason that site is so helpful is, in addition to the book, when you buy it, then you can come and get all kinds of meditations, because we didn't even talk about meditation. But big element inside of like guided meditations and things that go along with the book. So you get all access to that there. And then wealthclinic.com, I have a quiz that tells you about like what's going on and what might be that pattern that is not working for you. So you can take that quiz at wealthclinic.com.
Awesome sauce. I'm looking at your website and it says, you guys address the inner dimensions of money, thought, beliefs, cultural conditioning, trauma. People do have trauma. But I think my whole life is a trauma. No, I'm just kidding. Half of it is. But yeah, it's amazing to me. I mean, like I said, I would talk to people and they'd be like, oh yeah, when you have money, then everything's perfect. And everything goes your way. It's just, so I want to have money someday too. And you're like, I can tell you that it's not quite there. But yeah, but meditation probably would have helped me back in the day, because one of my problems was there was just so much noise and so much pressure. And I would create more noise just to, I don't know, you just got fed on the drug of it. You're like, okay, well, we need more noise. We need more stuff, and we need more activity and more pressure, and maybe that'll make things better. And you're like, nah, sometimes it's not going to quite make the diamond that I'm looking for. But I encourage everyone to go get her book, The Mindful Millionaire by Leisa Peterson. Be sure to check her out on the interwebs. I encourage my audience, thank you for staying all the way through. Be sure to go to thecvpn.com, the Chris Voss Podcast Network.com. You can subscribe to all 9 podcasts over there. And we've got a lot of great, brilliant authors, in fact, from St. Martin's Press, which is, I believe, the publishers of The Mindful Millionaire. We got some great guests coming from them and other book publishers. Go to youtube.com/Chris Voss to see the video version of this wonderful discussion. Leisa, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you, Chris. It's been awesome.
Thanks to my audience, and we'll see you next time.